Here to unpack modern currency in the streaming era in a session sponsored by iSpot TV is Stuart Schwartzapfel of iSpot, Tim Ware of Crackle, Jeffrey Imberman of Tastemade, and Kevin McKern of Vevo.
All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. You may have noticed from the title of today's panel, I'm just going to say outright, the title makes no sense compared to what we're actually going to talk about today. And the reason why that is not because we used the wrong titles, but because the topic of conversation today was actually embargoed, so we weren't allowed to put it into the program. So, super secret stuff. But what we are here to talk about today is the formation of the ISA, which is the Independent Streaming Alliance. And we have some of the founding members up on stage with us, Tim, Jeff, and Kevin, which are representing the larger group, which consists of not just 3 publishers, but actually 10 to start. And iSpot works with the ISA from a measurement standpoint, and we're proud to share the stage with them. So let's kick it off, fellas. So hot off the presses, just announced the ISA. 10 of the leading independent streaming programmers are involved. You guys have a shared agenda. You have a big vision. Can you give us a sense of what the genesis of the idea was, how it came to be?
I can jump in. And again, we're going to weave in measurement because iSpot's investing in a study. There are 10 publishers. We're all smaller, independent, native streaming companies. Hotel room, consumer electronics show. A handful of us are talking. There's some obstacles to our business. One thing leads to another, yada, yada, yada. Distribution, measurement, it comes up. And we had the press release yesterday. If you hadn't seen it, we're really excited to represent major native streaming programmers. I don't know if you have anything to add, but that's the Genesis story without the...
Yeah, I would add that the Genesis also has to do with the incredible momentum that's happening right now in the industry. Momentum is rife with disruption, it's rife with friction, and as independents, what we're seeing are strong headwinds that are, really gathering in the marketplace right now. So whether that be on the distribution side, whether that be on the demand side, whether that be on the ad tech side, the time was right for the independents to have a bigger voice in the marketplace relative to the topics I just mentioned.
Yeah, and we weren't there at the inception, but we were happy to join and be a launch partner. And you've heard a lot of the challenges already in the room. I've only been in the room for a few minutes, and I felt like it was one of our prep calls earlier. But I think that if you are in this streaming space and you're working with fast networks and you're working with different connected television applications and other hardware services and software services, that there is a synergy that can happen across all of those fragmented distribution points. And as an early runner in that space for Vevo and licensing music television all around the world, when we were listening to the guys and what they were coming up with and the challenges that they were facing, there was a tremendous amount of commonality. So we wanted to jump in and lend our part, and we worked with a lot of the same partners already and have a fair amount of scale to lend to the consortium. And we're excited to be here, and they're great folks with great ideas.
Thanks, guys. So the ISA calls for 3 distinct phases to roll out: measurement, distribution, and demand. Obviously, the first one of those is near and dear to my heart, but can you guys give everyone an overview of what those phases look like and what the timing is around them?
Yeah, I'll jump first. I mean, those are the 3 pillars. I guess data and targeting is probably the throw it under. That's going to be a phase 1 tactic. But yeah, they're the 3 pillars. Obviously, without measurement, we don't have anything. So the first order of business was to report we have 2,200 endpoints, 500 million hours consumed on a monthly basis based on just self-reported numbers. And there is a study in field right now. So I think demand, I mentioned the origin story. There's some obstacles, and then I'll let Jeff elaborate a little bit more on the distribution and friends over here.
Yeah, I think on the distribution side, like I mentioned earlier, being independent in the early days for most of us, when we jumped into this space, Tastemade 3+ years ago, there was an incredible amount of opportunity, let's say, in the fast space, in the OTT, in the streaming space. Fast forward 3+ years, that window is quickly closing for programmers, certainly independent programmers, as platforms recognize that there's a tipping point of potentially too much content. They're making decisions that don't necessarily bode well for the independents, let's say, relative to the audiences we reach and the content we produce on behalf of those audiences. So coming together allows us to have a voice, a collective voice, but also speak on behalf of those consumers that love our content. So whether it be music-driven or food and travel-driven or pure entertainment content, there needs to be a voice in the marketplace relative to getting that content out to that end user, wherever they are, by the way, whether it be on AVOD, whether it be on FAST or other means. Our goal is to ensure that that flow continues.
Yeah, and to the point of distribution, our entire charter is to serve artists, fans, and brands. And there's a lot of interesting challenges that come along with that. Many of the folks that started this particular organization found their origins on walled gardens, various types of social networks, content distributors like YouTube for our purposes. And you have to learn how to exist in a place that's very challenged and very closed. And as you start to fan out, and our particular distribution strategy is one of ubiquity. We want to have our music videos in every place where fans frequent. And in order to do that, you have to find, I heard Dan say 4 ad servers, and we're there with you, brother. Like it's actually quite tough to distribute and monetize content across all of these services in a common way. But those are just simple challenges that I think a lot of folks come up with. But if you compare us to some of the larger networks that are out there, a lot of their strategies are different than ours, right? It's a combination of driving subscription and then also free front porches for advertising. So not necessarily the same thing that we care about in the same places that we care about. We're not an if you build it, they will come strategy. So we have a different set of considerations, and we need to represent those to the great partners that carry our content and to allow us to sell the advertising there.
So let's stay on distribution for a second. So one of the objectives of the ISA is to define best practices for independent streamers such as yourselves. Can you guys tell us a little bit about what you mean by that and how readily available those best practices and the insights related to them will be?
Yeah, I'll start just because I think in the early days of Vevo going to connected TVs and then starting up with fast services, we had to cobble together a set of measurement criteria, find some level of scalability in how we measured, be it panel or ACR or otherwise. And then we needed to get some acceptance from the agency marketplace that we can project those out across services that don't include those same exact measurement services. And so we kind of did that over a long period of time. We're able to establish ourselves in an upfront marketplace and drive a fair amount of revenue coming through. And I think the supply that we represent is all on television. The demand that we represent is shifting from broadcast and cable television into connected TV. And so we had to go about working with the iSpots and the Nielsen's and the T-Visions and you name it, Disco. There's no measurement company that we won't work with if we think that it'll deliver some value back to our advertisers and our agencies. And there's a level of kind of ubiquity in that flexibility and that optionality that we present. And if it could all be wrapped up in one neat bow, great. But the best practice, I think, is the learning along the way. Where are the best folks to work with? What services are lit up and certified on their endpoints? And what is the currency that you're able to go back into the market and transact against. What's in demand and what's available, because those two things aren't always the same.
Cool. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Look, I would just add, like, it's interesting, just having seen the last panel, it starts to mirror, and everyone makes the comparison to cable television and what's happening with connected TV. You know, it's almost like the distribution used to be a couple minutes an hour, and we coexisted. So that dynamic's changing. So again, the common voice that we can provide based on, you know, our collective reach and interest, and ultimately the audience. I just wanted to reinforce, Jeff said it, it's like we have a lot of viewers, there's a lot of fragmentation. Our diversity of programming, our viewership, and uniqueness and fragmentation that we're fueling, it's kind of leading to that disruption and the challenges, right, that we're causing, maybe.
So the word diversity comes up a lot. So there's actually a slide with all the founding members of the ISA. If we could just pull that up. Hopefully you guys have it. There it is. So in speaking about the diversity, right, we mean diversity of the intended audience, but we also mean diversity in terms of the lifestyle and the interest that those streaming programmers cater to. So can we give the audience a sense of kind of the different lifestyle interests and verticals that are represented by these founding ISA members?
I'll jump just on the programmer vantage point. There's obvious ones. There's Quelly TV, which is...
Hold closer. Closer.
Closer. Oh, I'm sorry. I usually am accused of speaking too loud. There's Quelly TV, which is Black Stories. It's African-American focused. There's Reverie, the first live stream LGBTQ. Did I get that right? Live stream channel, right? And then there's a big audience. We have founders, Byron Allen with Local Now. There's Vikrant Mathur with The Future Today, whom you probably know from Connected TV. But then there's the audiences, Crackle and Redbox, really over-index on multicultural segments. I'll defer to Kevin and Jeff in terms of your diversity of programming.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty obvious. I think we represent the music industry. We're a joint venture of Universal Music and Sony Music Entertainment, and enlist all of the other independents and major labels as well on our TV distribution. So any artist you can think of, any song you can think of, any audience that you can think of globally, that's who we program on our service. We do it in a bespoke fashion depending on the endpoint, and we cater, you know, and customize our programming to those endpoints, to those geographies, to those audiences. And, you know, you can look at it in a half hour or an hour-long block or a 24/7 program channel on an EPG. There is something for absolutely everyone in the world when you start to present music in sight, sound, and motion.
Yeah, on the Tastemade side, being born out of digital and social, a 10-year-old company that built fandom around the world on every major social platform, we've always been multicultural. We cater to an audience that knows no boundaries. And as a lifestyle program in food, travel, and home and design, we appeal to them in ways that traditional media companies in the space haven't. We speak their language. And most importantly, we speak their language wherever they reside. Our streaming channels in particular, which we have 4 now, are in over 50 countries, reaching 140 million households. How can we not be diverse from that perspective? So our goal is to always build content that resonates locally, but that plays globally, so that audiences all around the world can embrace the content and the different lifestyles that we try to represent everywhere.
And hopefully the measurement will kind of bring that unique value to life, and I'm confident that it will. We have a study in market now that we're currently collecting data for that pulls in incremental reach and frequency that these streaming publishers are generating and aggregates it all together so that we can understand the collective impact, right? What % of US TV households is this collective group of founding members reaching, and how incremental is that to the linear audience that advertisers are spending money on as well, right? And the hypothesis is that these digital publishers are better together than they are apart, right? And we aim for the measurement to kind of pay that off. But continuing on with the conversation, I think that a lot of people say that this ISA is kind of overdue. Can you guys tell us a little bit about what you mean when you say a healthy ecosystem should benefit everyone, not just the few. Can we kind of wax poetic on that a little bit?
I would love to wax poetic. I'll spare the song for later. But again, I think it goes back to the origin story. And it was really, again, aside from being kind of group therapy for us, the amount of ideas, and as Kevin, who kind of came into it a little bit later, there's such a commonality. I think the overdue factor is, we've seen it. We've seen longer tail sites. We've seen the trends. We've seen the way the upfront marketplace and the need, frankly, the timing from the buy side. There's a lot of need for brands to advertise within diverse programming for good reason. This gives, frankly, buyers the ability to better find us, submit information on the website. But the timing in society for this offering, and frankly, the speed with which the ad tech marketplace is evolving at a breakneck speed, it's overdue, and frankly, it's just in time so that we can better support our respective business and our independent voices.
Yeah, I think something Dan said earlier, maybe 15 minutes ago, is really funny but appropriate. He mentioned the JIC. And what we can't allow to happen is the few to set the rules of engagement for the many. That's how walled gardens are built. That's how audiences are separated, from the advertiser in meaningful ways, which is ironic. But our goal is to have that voice once again so that the few don't set the terms for future engagement, whether that be on the buying side, distribution side, or otherwise. And I think that this is a major step, toward having that voice and being a part of the conversation.
So double-clicking on Better Together, and we have time probably for like 2 more questions. I'm going to try to squeeze in. So when we think about Better Together, from a media economic standpoint, will the ISA lead to kind of more efficient and effective media investment in the future?
One of the hopes, the initial hope, is to just promote the quality of the content, the diversity of the content, and the audiences, but that's certainly a potential outcome insofar as we just want to generate better visibility. And again, whether it's programmatic ad tech from an SSP or DSP vantage point, it's better visibility, frankly, to better enable brands to weave in. That wasn't the original, that's phase 2. Like phase 2 and 3, I kind of wrote out, and then Philippe, who's kind of involved, said, whoa, back up a second. So we kind of are where we are, but
I think I would answer it in a little bit of a different way, just specific to Vevo, is that we take a real representative sample of the television market. We are set up as a network. We are a one-stop shop for buying music videos and music television on TVs themselves. And if those best practices that we've put out there in the world, those currencies that we've been able to successfully transact against, the measurement criteria, the different ad serving configurations, the programmatic stacks are of benefit to the rest of the group, then that's great. We would love to share that with them. Again, kind of presenting a little bit of a different scale when it comes to the amount of content that we have available to us, over 40 years of television content available to us, and new coming out every single day, just like these folks produce on a daily basis. It allows us a level of recency and frequency that the programming opportunities and the measurement opportunities and the audience diversity can really register a statistical significant result. And we're out there to help everybody learn along the way.
All right, last question for you guys. Fast forward a year from now, what has the ISA accomplished?
You first. I've been hogging the first question.
I think it's obvious what I'll say. Having a true seat at the table so that we can talk to the iSpots of the world, we can talk to the trade desks of the world, we can talk to the trading companies of the world, talk to the industry as a common voice that allows us to be heard and allows us to move initiatives forward, whether it be ad tech or monetization schemes or otherwise.
I would just say I anticipate some good results. I'm hopeful that we get 10 to 20 million incremental viewership to the U.S. TV households, which is about 15, 20, 30% of it. And with the new interest, and we have a whole second phase of publishers, that we will have significant scale, and scale where there is cord cutters, right? So we're going to over-index in the harder to reach publishers, which are underspent. We've seen the whole years of mobile, so now we're in connected TV. So I'm hopeful that and anticipate that research to support.
Kevin, any quick ones before we go?
I would just add some level of validation for what happens on connected TVs and stitching together the fragmentation that from a buying standpoint they see. Because from a selling standpoint, we don't see that fragmentation. We've organized it in such a way that you can buy it as one, and this hopefully will give some level of validation that that's true across the board.
Cool. Thanks, guys, and thanks, everybody.